Hello everyone and welcome to the 10th episode of the Chris Talks Football Podcast, and today we are going to be rounding up the last couple of weeks of the results in the Premier League as well. We're also going to dip into the Championship as well to see what results there has been as well, but mostly this is going to be mostly about the Premier League and what has happened over the last 2 weeks. We're going to talk the leaders Liverpool and we're going to talk the leaders Manchester City as well, the defending champions. We'll also dip into what happened in the Champions League as well, but this will probably be an episode all about the Premier League and the Champions League, so stay tuned for that then. So then let's start off our roundup of this week's football by doing the Champions League and Europa League. And in the Champions League, obviously, the defending champions Liverpool went to Genk in Belgium away from home to see if they can pick up their first win in a couple of years. And the answer was yes, they could, quite convincingly, with Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain scoring 2 and setting up Sadio Mane and Mohamed Salah also scoring in a 4-1 victory over Belgian side Genk in the Champions League. And well, they're pretty much comfortably already through into the knockout stages. So for Liverpool, the main focus on the Champions League now is to, see their opponents getting all of their players, fit and ready for, the Premier League season, because of course when you're trying to win the Champions League, it's obviously going to be a long and hard struggle. So I think getting all of their players fit in the Premier League would do their side the well of good, because it's going to be a long season. And I think that Liverpool do have what it takes again to win the Champions League. Of course, they're going to need a little bit of luck, like last season when they faced Barcelona. They're going to need that same luck again, that same togetherness and spirit. But there's no reason why they can't do it, especially after what they've said. They've said, of course, we have the capability to win the Champions League again. And I do stand by that. I think that it is a really good foreground and really good background to go by. And I think that's what's going to keep them going this season. But I think in terms of the Champions League, they're going to have to be thinking of who is the best bet, who's like the easier draw, whose side it really is the easiest draw. But good result for Liverpool. And then their Premier League title rivals, Manchester City, they won 5-1 against Atalanta. And really, it was a really good result as well for Manchester City, because, of course, of coming off the back of a win against Crystal Palace earlier on that week. But they were a little bit inconsistent there. A loss to Wolves, then a win, but now they have another win. They're back on form, and I do really think that Manchester City this season, if they can get everything right this season, I think they really will go far in the Champions League. I actually think they'll probably reach the final of this competition, because, it's not a matter of if City win the Champions League, it's a matter of when in the next few years, because they have a lot of money. They're probably one of the most financially stable clubs in the whole country. So that's the reason why I think Manchester City will go far in the Champions League. But 5-1 against Atalanta means that Shakhtar Donetsk, they've beaten as well, which means they're sitting top of their group, and that will do them a real world of good. But despite Phil Foden getting sent off, Manchester City will still have a lot of squad depth, I think, giving some of the younger players a chance, especially today, of course, or this week rather, because of the EFL Cup. But for Pep Guardiola to get his absolute best out of every single player in the first team, he needs to play them in as many competitions as they can. Of course, the EFL Cup on, but they, I think, need all that help, all that momentum that will drive them forward and get results to catch teams like Liverpool, because as we find out, that Liverpool are on a very good run at the moment. But good result for Manchester City. Also, Tottenham, they briefly sort of put their woes behind them and beat Red Star Belgrade by 5-1, with Harry Kane and Heung-min Son scoring braces. And also the other English team in the Champions League, Chelsea, they achieved a massive away win against Ajax. So that's really good for them to see as well. But for the Premier League now, it's 6 games unbeaten in all competitions for Frank Lampard before this weekend, the weekend just gone. I really rate what he is doing at Chelsea, because he's taken a squad that has essentially been put on hold for a year, and he's taken the younger players like Tomori and Abraham to be the best that they can be, and they've also obviously brought back Michy Batshuayi, who was a big money signing a few years ago, and he's playing them. And this is the philosophy that I think is the reason why Chelsea should stick with Frank Lampard, because they're doing well, they're getting in the top four, and they're playing good football, good expansive amount of football, which is why they won against Ajax. But also in the Europa League, Arsenal, Nicolas Pepe got a brace, and is this the moment where Arsenal fans expect their £72 million paid back to the club by Nicolas Pepe? We'll find out when we go on to the Premier League. But also, Manchester United beating Partizan Belgrade and putting their little string of winless matches to an end in all competitions. That was, I believe, four matches winless, four winless matches before today. So that was a good sight for Manchester United fans. Also in the Europa League, Celtic and Rangers managed good results. Celtic won against Lazio. Christopher Julian heading in a winner from close range from a corner. And also Alfredo Morelos, Rangers' talismanic striker, getting the Steven Gerrard side a point in Portugal away to Porto. So that is the Champions League. Now let's go on to the Premier League, where probably the biggest result of the weekend was an absolute demolition. 9-0 Leicester City beating Southampton on Friday night. And it wasn't so much as a football match, it was a mismatch. That's what it was. It was honestly incredible to see Leicester scoring 9 goals. And remember, this is a club that nearly got relegated 5 years ago, so that is really good to see. But what has happened to Southampton? They have absolutely capitulated at the wheel. I actually thought Southampton were going to do pretty decently, try and get into, I thought they were going to survive but the way that they're going, they could be down. And Hasenhüttl really, although he kept them up last season, it's a bit like last season, because Mark Hughes, despite keeping Southampton up, didn't really get to the best of starts last season and got sacked. And this could be a recurring theme for the Saints, because really they have no hope in defence. They really need a defence, and the additions of Bednarek and the emergence of Valerie and Vestergaard, it's just no good. You need a solid defender who can actually trap and clear a ball, and not the defensive errors that have been bugging Southampton of late, because really, if you keep playing like that, then it's just not going to happen. And I really do think that the Premier League and its quality especially is getting very good, as we will see. But I mean, for Southampton now, they've only scored they're on a barren run. They haven't won, I think, for quite a while. I think it's now 5 winless matches, and they've only scored, I think, 4 goals rather, in that process in 5. So that really is not good to see for Southampton fans. And despite Danny Ings scoring in a few goals recently, it's not helping the rest of the team, because the rest of the team is not scoring. James Ward-Prowse, who I tipped to be probably an England international last season, before this season started, he just hasn't delivered. He just hasn't delivered for me. But Southampton really need to improve. But Leicester, on the other hand, for me, I think this is a better Leicester team than when they won the title, because if you really think about it, the voids that have been filled, obviously Robert Huth and Wes Morgan were really influential in that title win, and their best days have gone. Huth's gone, and Morgan still at Leicester, but obviously not really getting the games because of his age. Soyuncu and Evans are really doing well to fill the void. Maddison and Tielemans providing the midfield duo of Drinkwater and Mahrez, in my opinion. Ayoze Perez is giving them an option up front. He's a little bit like Shinji Okazaki was when Leicester won the league, so that's really good to see. And also, of course, Jamie Vardy scoring goals at a good age. and he's got, I think, over 100 Leicester goals, which is very good. He's got over 50 Premier League goals. I think he's probably one of the most underrated strikers, and I think he is just really unlucky that he's called retirement for his England career at that time, because when he retired, it was I think in 2018. So this was the emergence of the likes of Jadon Sancho, and this is where also Raheem Sterling really hit form. And you could say that maybe the timing was a little bit unlucky, because I think in the current England squad, I think Jamie Vardy would probably get in as a backup to Harry Kane, because he's got pace, he's got good strength, as his FIFA stats show us. But he's very good. Perez, Tielemans, Brendan Rodgers is really turning that side into a mini Manchester City, I can already tell. And could they break into the top four? I don't think so. I don't think they'll ever see Champions League football again. They could reach the top six though, maybe 5th or 6th place finish, but I think the Champions League is too premature. So I mean, Leicester are riding high at the moment. And another team that's also riding high at the moment is Brighton. Despite that last minute winner against Aston Villa a few weeks ago, Brighton now are on a decent little run. Now it's 2 wins out of the past 3 that Brighton have scored, and it's actually 2 defeats in the last 5. So Graham Potter's really playing good and open-minded and expansive football with the likes of the signings of Trossard and Maupay. They're doing well as well, but Everton, you really have to feel for them. They conceded the last-minute winner thanks to a Luka Dean own goal, and now they've conceded quite a lot of goals, and now it's 1 win in their last 5, and that 1 win, remember, was against West Ham last week. So is this time, Everton fans, to call Marco Silva's time done? Because personally, for me, I think they should stay with him, despite 1 win in 5 and 4 defeats in that 5-match run. Give him time. I remember 2 seasons ago they did this with Koeman whenever he went on a really bad streak and they sacked him, and they had a really god-awful season. And when you're relying on Sam Allardyce, it's not really a very good hit. Of course, he can keep you in the Premier League, but he can't get you anywhere in the top 6, where Everton have claimed they've had the money, they've had the signings, they have the players to reach the top 6 year after year after year, and they don't do it. And they couldn't have lost it. They lost it the Everton way. And really, ever since that win against Wolves way back in, I think it was late August, was it? Yeah, I think it was late August, early September, they have just collapsed, and they really have not looked like winning any other of their games. And I think Marco Silva's job is at risk if he doesn't win his next 2 games for me, because I think that Everton have the players to finish top 6. I mean, Richarlison is, scoring goals. Bernard was at Shakhtar Donetsk, who regularly competing for the Champions League. Who else? They have England's number 1, and for England's number 1 to, be sitting on the bench, or to be sitting at home every Wednesday or Thursday, it doesn't bode well, because remember 5 years ago, Joe Hart was playing regular Champions League football, which is why he was one of the best goalkeepers in England. But I think they really need a good amount of signings if they want that Europa League place, because Moise Kean hasn't got going yet really. Andre Gomes is not really showing the form he had last season, where he was okay, but maybe the key players, Richarlison and Luka Dean, just think it's not going to happen really with Everton. But Brighton, they're doing well. I believe they're in the top half of the table now, and Graham Potter really has done well with his shrewd signings. Neil Maupay as a replacement, quote unquote, for Glenn Murray. The emergence of young Aaron Connolly has impressed me as well, and they'll crack on now. Brighton, they've really got that team spirit, because despite Everton leading 2-1, they came back. Pascal Gross is their midfield general, and it's just really good for Brighton to get back into the top half after the turbulent end to the season that they had, sacking the manager Chris Hughton, of course. But speaking of Southern football teams, Bournemouth and Watford played out a fairly dull 0-0 draw. And obviously it was two teams that have been lacking in terms of goals and creativity, and you have to say that despite Watford's unluckiness against Spurs last week, that really it is really time for Watford fans to be a little bit worried, because a quarter of the season has gone and they have not registered a win, and 7 out of the last 8 football clubs that have not amassed a win in their first 10 games in the Premier League has gone down. Newcastle being the only instance where it hasn't applied to them, and that was last season. So really, they need to start winning matches, but Watford, because they are really on a tightrope now. They're not on a good run. They haven't scored. They've only scored 1 goal. In fact, 1 goal in their past. Let's have a look. In their past 5 games, Watford. And I think the reason is because, of course, their lack of firepower up front. Troy Deeney and Danny Welbeck, of course, are injured. Danny Welbeck cobbled off against Tottenham last weekend. And Gerard Deulofeu really isn't a striker. He's more of a cam or a winger or a number 10, a false 10. So yeah, I think Watford really need to sign a striker, and Ismail Yassar, as far as I've seen, hasn't really had an input for me, and that is really disappointing, because he was supposed to be the signing that took Watford forward, because Javi Gracia was doing well, then signed Ismail Yassar, but it just hasn't happened for Watford since, and I really do fear that they might go down. I don't think they will. I think they will stay up just if they get the right form, but they could probably be one of the 3 down, because I predicted that Aston Villa, Norwich and Burnley would go down. But yeah, of course, it doesn't look like it's happening. But, Bournemouth as well, they're a side that's struggling for goals, without a goal in 3 games. And it's 2 consecutive 0-0 draws, which is good, because 2 clean sheets, which Aaron Ramsdale, the young 21-year-old goalkeeper, has made. But Callum Wilson hasn't scored in a few goals. Josh King has only scored once this season. Ryan Fraser, only 3 assists. At this time last season, he was double that. So really, Bournemouth need to sort of liven up themselves, because they're starting to edge into the bottom half of the table, that bottom 5. And, they don't want to be there, because they've got teams like Southampton and Newcastle that are there as well. But I think for Bournemouth will be fine. I don't think there'll be any pressure on them. I really do think that they'll survive, they'll come out of it, and it'll be, very good to see. But, yeah, I think goals for both of them are what's going on at that club. Speaking of goals, there were plenty of them at Turf Moor. Burnley conceded 4 but scored 2 in a 4-2 loss to Chelsea at home. Chelsea, of course, I said, had a brilliant win in midweek in the Champions League. And Chelsea had a hat-trick hero in Christian Pulisic, and Pulisic finally taking his chances when they have come to him in the Premier League. He did pretty well against Ajax, and he finally got his chance in the Premier League with his first hat-trick in Chelsea colours. And for Chelsea, again, what a job Frank Lampard has done. He has taken a team that had the transfer ban. Hazard was on his way. Have they found his replacement in Pulisic? Well, he's got the age. He's, I think, 5 or 6 years younger than Hazard, and he can really play. Of course, Callum Hudson-Odoi has returned from injury, and I really do think Chelsea under Frank Lampard will be a force. I think that 6th place that I thought that they would get is looking a little bit under threat, because they might actually make the top 4. They could be that 4th side, because in my opinion the top 4 will be City, Liverpool, Spurs. And I said that Arsenal would finish in the top 4 because of the signing of Nicolas Pepe. But these were my predictions way back in early to mid-August. But yeah, really, it's not the season that Chelsea were hoping for, or were expecting. They were expecting probably to do worse, but they've done well. And I really do think Frank Lampard's taken them in the right direction. That's 7 games unbeaten now in a row. That's really good, very good, in fact. But for Burnley, that now for Burnley is 2 defeats in a row. But they have scored goals, which is the bright side. So I think Sean Dyche won't be worried about it. Ashley Barnes hasn't really got firing though this season. He's only got 2 goals this season, as has Chris Wood. So the sooner they can get those 2 firing, the more chance Burnley have of staying up, in my opinion. Manchester City beat Aston Villa by 3-0. Pretty routine for City. A goal from Kevin De Bruyne, which was intervened by VAR because of a flick on David Silva. Was it a flick by David Silva who was offside? I don't know. For me, I think it was onside. The goals counted. Raheem Sterling is on fire. 17 goals in 18 games for club and country. And City still 6 points behind Liverpool because Liverpool beat Tottenham by 2-1. Mohamed Salah's penalty and Jordan Henderson scored for Liverpool, and despite Tottenham winning in midweek, it hasn't cured their worries, and despite Harry Kane putting them in the lead after the first minute, they're still in crisis. Tottenham, one win in their last 5, and even that was in the Champions League, so that doesn't really count, to be fair, because it's Red Star Belgrade, and I think my Year 11 Sanders can beat Red Star Belgrade. So yeah, troubling times for Spurs, really are troubling times, because everyone's saying Pochettino out. For me, they should stick with him because he's taken Tottenham to a damn Champions League final, and yet they're calling for his head to be going off because of the results that he's had recently, and they really shouldn't panic because when he came in, the squad was filled with Soldado and Emmanuel Adebayor. So, and look at the turnaround. They've got arguably England's greatest ever striker in Harry Kane, and they've also got, Dele Alli, who's still young, and Heung-min Son. So, 5 years ago, I think Tottenham fans would have taken the fact that Pochettino would have got to a Champions League final. But for Liverpool, could they challenge City? For me, I still think City will win it. I really do. They'll get the momentum. They'll just keep winning and winning, and Liverpool will slip up. I think that, like last season, the Champions League will take its toll because they had a tough group last season. They had to, go to Napoli, go to PSG, and they didn't really get good results, and that had an effect on the pitch because it was around January where the title slipped away. But Manchester City are relentless, and I think they will become champions for me. West Ham and Sheffield United played out a 1-1 draw at the London Stadium. It was a decent game for me. Sheffield United having the best defensive record in the Premier League with Liverpool after their clean sheet against Arsenal, and who would have thought that? I mean, 3 years ago this team were in League One. In fact, as late as I think May 2017, they were just getting promoted up to the Championship. And if you told me that 2 years later they'd be beating Sheffield United, they'd be beating Arsenal, I would have said, do you mean in the FA Cup? Because they're not getting in the Premier League. But they've got a solid back line. They play really, really tight, and they don't allow anything to come off. And they played reasonably well against the top 6. So fair play. Norwich lost to Manchester United, and now that's 5 defeats in a row for Norwich. And that is not good. I really think now that despite Timu Pukki winning the award for August, I believe it was, or September, they are sliding off a cliff now. He's not scoring goals. Todd Cantwell really isn't assisting, and the defence is looking leaky again. But Tim Krul made 2 saves from Manchester United penalties. Manchester United, I think, will get back to form. For me, this is just the start. 2 wins in a row, 2 wins in 4 days, which is very good for Manchester United. But really good victory for Manchester United. I said that they'd finish 5th. I think they could. I think if they keep their heads, they could. They just need a midfielder for me, because Andreas Pereira isn't really getting picked, and who do they have apart from Fred? Scott McTominay. Jesse Lingard hasn't got a goal or an assist in this calendar year, so that's very worrying. And Marcus Rashford isn't really, hitting any goals, which is why they've been linked with a couple of strikers and midfielders, because Rashford and Greenwood are the only 2 strikers that they really have at the club. But Norwich really are in trouble, and I do think they will go down. Newcastle and Wolves played out a 1-1 draw that was okay. Sean Longstaff, one of their highly rated youngsters at Newcastle, was sent off for a tackle on Ruben Neves after Jamal Lascelles' opener for Newcastle was cancelled out by a goalkeeping mistake that led to Johnny Castro Otto scoring for Wolves. Newcastle need to get Joelinton up and running. He's only scored 1 goal this season, and he is looking like £40 million down the drain. This will be a long season for Newcastle, and not the 12th place that I originally predicted. So that makes me look a right mess, which is not what I want. But Arsenal 2, Crystal Palace 2 as well is the final Premier League result of the weekend. But the main talking point in the Arsenal game was the treatment of Swiss midfielder and Arsenal captain Granit Xhaka. Because when he was substituted midway through the second half, he was cupping his ear saying, "I can't hear you," to the fans, because the fans were booing him when he went off. And this is a sign of disrespect. People have now started to say, Emery isn't what he was. Lad, Emery has taken you to a Europa League final, and despite not, delivering the goods, a final is a final, okay? So Emery is a good manager. He's won the Europa League more times than any other manager. He will win you the Europa League this season. I think Arsenal will win the Europa League this season. I do. Nicolas Pepe will start firing eventually. Martinelli is really good, and their defence in Europe is looking pretty good as well, despite conceding 2 goals to Victoria Goramais. But it's unacceptable. It's a team failure, the fact that they didn't win against Crystal Palace, not just an individual failure. They also had a late winner that was cancelled out, Arsenal. Socrates, his goal was cancelled out because of a foul in the build-up. And again, the response at full time, again, I reinstate this, the fans should not boo one player because of a team performance. 11 players are responsible for a loss, not just one. It just is unacceptable. Arsenal fans should not go around naming and shaming other people because of they did this and they did that, or he's not very good, or he's rubbish, get him out. And you have to remember that Arsenal sold a couple of their players. Ozil is looking like he wants out because he's not playing for the team. He hasn't put in the performances. So when one of your club's marquee signings 5 years ago is not playing, that's when there are problems at Arsenal. He says Ozil thinks because of the fans and the way the club is going, because of the fans and the results. And okay, the results are just 40% of why Ozil's not playing. It could be down to his work ethic. I mean, you're getting paid £350,000 a week. Get on that goddamn pitch. But I really do think this is unacceptable behaviour. And, there's a reason why Granit Xhaka was very consolable and very frustrated when he went down the tunnel. But so the Premier League table, the top 4 is looking like this: Liverpool 6 points ahead of Manchester City, and then Leicester and Chelsea 3rd and 4th. Again, as I said, I think Leicester will could be the only team to break into that top 6. Chelsea's doing well as well. Watford, Newcastle, Norwich as the bottom 3. If you replace Newcastle and Watford with Aston Villa and Burnley, those are the 3 teams I think are going down. So then let's get on to the EFL and the Championship fixtures that happened this weekend. And the Yorkshire Derby, one of 2 Yorkshire derbies. Sheffield Wednesday and Leeds ended goalless, which means Leeds missed the chance to close the gap to the top of the table. Swansea closed the gap to the top of the table by beating Cardiff 1-0. West Bromwich Albion drew 0-0. West Bromwich Albion drew 2-2 with Charlton Athletic. A late penalty and a sending off happened at the Hawthorns as well. Preston North End drew. Preston North End 1-3-2 against Blackburn. Brentford beat QPR 3-1 away from home at a London derby. And Gary Rowett returned to management as Millwall boss after Neil Harris stepped down, and he was in the dugout when his team beat Stoke City by 2-0. In League One, Sol Campbell's new side, Southend United, they lost 3-1 to Ipswich. Bristol Rovers also drew to Portsmouth 2-2. Portsmouth one of the promotion favourites. Also Fleetwood Town, they won against MK Dons. And one of the real surprises of the league, Wycombe Wanderers, Gareth Ainsworth's side, have won away from home against Rotherham 1-0. A couple of games were postponed in League 2, but the key results in League 2 were Leyton Orient drew with Carlisle United at Brisbane Road. Stevenage drew time on Jim Bentley after them winning 1-0 against Morecambe. Jim Bentley, the former Morecambe manager, has now got the job at AFC Fylde after his sacking. He was actually the longest serving manager in the Football League outside of Eddie Howe. Also Exeter, they beat Plymouth by 4-0. Exeter do look a good side to get promoted into League One. And also, I shall leave you with this. Granada are top of the La Liga, the Spanish division, after their win against, I believe it was Real Betis. So, well, Tony Adams used to be manager of that club. I'm not sure if he still is. But Granada are doing decently, but obviously it's not going to last because of Barcelona's dominance in that country. And also the fact that it's so close in the title race in Germany. The top 6 or 7 are separated by 2 or 3 points, which is unbelievable. Really, really unbelievable. But yeah, that has been episode number 10 of the Crystal Football Podcast. Hopefully you guys did enjoy. If you did, subscribe to my YouTube channel, which is the same. And yeah, hopefully you guys give it a like, drop a comment. And as always, I will talk to you guys in a while.